Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hello, my name's Hannah O'Loughlin. I'm 16 years old. I'm based on the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria, Australia. I'm currently a high school student. I just finished my year 11 exam, so now I'm year 12. And I have been involved with the Mornington Peninsula Shire for almost 5 years now, and I've also been part of the Australian Scout movement for almost over 7 years now. So about 5 years ago, in 2018, I was invited to do what's known as drop-in. It's an after-school activity run by the Shire. It's a lot of fun. We just hang out for a while, play games, have delicious afternoon tea. The youth workers put an amazing platter for us. And it's a good way to connect with other young people in the community. And from that, they asked us if we were interested in joining a youth a youth advisory committee, which they were hoping to start next year. So I put my hand up. I thought it would be a fun thing to try, and ever since then, I've been involved with the Shire. So I was a part of that, known as the Youth Advisory Committee, or YAC for short, for about 4 years. And throughout it, it was an amazing learning experience, and I learned a lot and hopefully contributed a lot to my community. So it starts off in 2019 with three separate groups, and then we all joined together in one. And from there, our job was to put on consults for groups within the Shire or groups outside of the Shire to get the youth's opinion on certain things. For example, we had things ranging from the BMX group within our Shire, asking us how to engage better with youth, all the way through to helping plan and design the local aquatic centre and the youth centre that are currently being built. And it was amazing to be a part of it, and it was amazing to know that there was a group out there who were interested in the youth's voice being heard, and it was amazing. And last year, we got a grant to be able to put on a youth exhibition. We decided to, with the money, make a Youth Recognition Awards with 5 different categories that young people aged 12 to 25 could get nominated for by the community. We then voted on each person, and they were picked. There were one winner per category. This year there was many more, and they all got to have their amazing efforts recognized by the community. And from that, it was really good to see people getting encouraged to be put in more input into the community, despite being still in high school, some even still in primary school. It was really good to see. And it was amazing to see the efforts of the group of young people get recognized as well by the community. Though I was only meant to be there for 2 years, I got an extension due to COVID. And from that, I had to leave at the end of last year. Though, because of the input I had put in and because I had shown an expression in wanting to continue having my voice be heard and wanting to contribute to the community, I got an email saying that I could be part of the Mornington Peninsula Shire's Citizens Panel. This was a group of 50 people from the Shire, and it was done as a representative sample. The really cool thing about the representative sample is that it was a reflection of the Shire, taking statistics from the latest census and putting it into a group of 50 people. For example, there was 24% of the peninsula's population are aged over 70, which meant we had 12 members on the Shire's panel who were over 70. From that, it meant that there weren't a lot of young people. I and two other girls were the only people there under 18, and there were only a handful of people who were under the age of 25. Although this was a little annoying and did feel a bit biased, if that is what our Shire is, then we have to represent it and have to understand that. So from that, we had 10 sessions, each on the first Wednesday of every month. And we had the initial ones, which were getting to know the Shire and understanding how it worked. This was really important because a lot of the things that people wanted to see improved on weren't actually Shire issues. They were federal, state, or even other organizations. For example, a really big one being potholes. They're everywhere. But unfortunately, most of the roads that were of issues with potholes weren't actually Shire owned, they were Vic roads. So it meant that people could understand better who they should contact with any of these concerns. And it meant that the conversations were a lot easier and a lot more directed on what we should be focusing on. So 6 reports were written and presented to the council out of it. Some of the topics we did included open air burning, waste management, urban reforestation, road safety, looking at reducing speed limits in some roads, and also paid parking. A pilot will be happening to see if we should be paying people to park, as we are one of the only shires that don't do that along our beaches. It was, again, an amazing opportunity, and I'm so happy that people know I want to do these things and contact me with it. And I'm so happy to have been part of a group. I met so many amazing people, connected with people, got a lot of schooling advice for some reason. Um, but it was amazing. And from it, I was given the opportunity to speak at the Australian Women in Local Government's annual conference about my experience in the Citizens panel. And again, another amazing opportunity that I'm so happy to have had, that I wish other people have the opportunity to have. And they are luckily continuing this freestanding body of committee, hopefully every year into the future, to make sure that people understand what the community wants and how we can better inform people about the community. And I'm so happy to, from it, be invited to stuff like this. Another really big aspect of being a youth leader has come from my time as part of the Australian Scouting movement. I've been a scout for a little over 7 years now, and it has been one of the best experiences of my life. I've learnt so much. Each night we go, we learn something new. It could be something extremely useful about, we have panel nights about government, we have nights about how to work on cars, to some stuff that probably isn't as useful, like how to build a raft and that. It's good in a survival situation, but I don't know how often we're going to be in that kind of situation. So another really big part of scouting is international scouting. Scouting has 57 million members and in 174 countries, with the last country joining being the Republic of the Congo, just before the 25th World Scout Jamboree. When I was 12, my parents dropped me off at the international departures at Melbourne for me to make my own way through security, passport control, to the gate to get my flight to New Zealand to attend their Scout Jamboree. And from that, I got a love for meeting other scouts from around the world. It was incredible. This year, I took a big leap and traveled to Korea by myself to attend the 25th World Scout Jamboree. This jamboree was amazing. It brought together 43,000 young people from 158 countries, and it really brought us together. It was amazing to meet people from other countries who had so many different stories and so many different experiences. But unfortunately, that's not what people know this jamboree for. Unfortunately, due to the timing of it being in July, August, being in Korea's summer, we were hit with a heat wave and it became really hard to manage. Then we unfortunately received news that there was a typhoon potentially coming towards us. Initially, the typhoon was headed toward Japan, which meant that we were going to receive some of the weather, but not the actual typhoon. Unfortunately, it changed course and was headed directly for the campsite. You can't be safe if you're in a tent when a typhoon comes, which meant that unfortunately the World Scout Jamboree had to be cancelled by the Korean government and we were all evacuated from site. Despite that, and despite the fact that that's all people know about Jamboree, it was incredible. Getting to meet people from so many other countries, hearing their stories, making lifelong friends, and also just generally learning about different cultures and learning about Korea. See, for the 2 weeks I was there, I learnt more than I could have ever learnt in a classroom. I learnt about Korea's history, I learnt about other countries' history, I learnt about how to be polite with people who have different cultural experiences and different religions, something that I feel a lot of people don't know. And throughout it, we were having the time of our lives. To beat the heat, we had water fights with the other contingents. Like one day we had a water fight with the Polish, and another day we had a water fight with the Koreans. And it really brought people together. People would just rock up on your campsite, and you would just expect them to say hi. They might want to trade some badges. If you were ever lost, you could go to a campsite and ask for directions. Regardless of the language barrier, we all knew how to get around pretty quickly. It was amazing, and for some reason, everyone wanted to come visit the Australians. We must have had a really good impression on them. But yeah, it was amazing. I got to be a leader. I got to help my unit navigate the constantly changing situation of the typhoon. I was one of the people who helped us make the decision as to whether or not to evacuate, which the consensus was we didn't want to evacuate yet, but we were happy to. Because the kind of thing about jamborees is you can put it in any paddock in any part of the world and just have a jamboree, but you can go to Seoul, South Korea, in Seoul, South Korea. So when we got evacuated, it didn't mean the end of the jamboree. It just meant that we had a few more days in Seoul before flying home. And it definitely still felt like a jamboree. Everyone would wear their scarves from their country, and as you'd walk around Seoul, you would see everyone else and, say hi to them, see how they were going. But unfortunately for the poor Koreans, they were ashamed. It was their national atrocity, even though it wasn't their fault. It was a typhoon that they had no control over. And it was simply just Mother Nature. Despite this, they kept on coming up to us and apologizing. People had free stuff to give out to scouts, and we felt really welcomed by them. One night we had dinner in Hongdae, which is a part of Seoul, and the two people running it, we believe, was a mother and a son. They absolutely loved us. They had a wall with local celebrities signed it. We got to sign it as well, so now we are immortalized in some restaurant in Hongdae. But again, I think scouting is one of the best things that could happen to people. It gives you resilience like nothing else. You can't travel to another country and get hit by a typhoon and go home and think it was amazing if you're probably not a scout. For us, it's just as it is. Our motto is prepared for adventure, prepared for life. And that's what we live by. You got to be prepared for something to go wrong because that's what life is going to be like. The unofficial motto that most of us Australians would say is she'll be right, meaning that a lot of things are going to be out of our control, but we'll always find a way to get through it. And we did. We found a way to get through a typhoon. We were put up in a hotel just outside of Seoul in Incheon, and we had a viewing party for the typhoon as it came in. We had karaoke in the rooms. We opened up everyone's doors so you could come in and say hi to them. We had dance parties, and we probably annoyed some people saying they're just trying to get their flight home. But I think it is one of the most important things that people could do is to take up leadership in any way. And I think the most accessible way to do it is through scouting. And even if you're not interested in leadership, the other things we do are amazing. For example, international scouting. With scouting, I have been to New Zealand twice and South Korea, and hopefully many more countries in the future. There's always opportunities happening, and it's incredible to see. Like, even people coming here. We have Australian Jamborees every 4 years, and from that, people come from all over the world, which was quite funny to think about. When we got evacuated from Korea, everyone was saying it was their fault for the conditions, for the heat wave. But then also, Australian Jamborees constantly get hit by floods, get hit by fires, extreme heat. It's truly just what we're used to. And that might be why we had such a good experience. The ABC said that we handled it like champs. I think that because of how we do scouting, we are extremely resilient. And I would encourage anyone, anywhere, even if you're an adult, to come try scouting. You can be a leader or you can be a scout. It truly makes a difference in the world and in the community.
Now, what an amazing story, Hannah. And you are truly a very resilient young woman.
Thank you.
Despite everything that went wrong, it sounds like you had fun.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to your family. You must have a very supportive family, your mother, your father. Are you the only child? Do you have siblings? Tell me a little bit about your family before we start the interview.
Yeah. So I have a younger sister. She's 2 years younger than me. She's also does scouting with me. My dad is a commander with the Fire Rescue Victoria. And my mum is community engagement officer at Parks Victoria, and both of them are amazing role models and extremely supportive of any endeavours that I want to attempt.
That is just wonderful. So, as someone so deeply involved in your community, what inspired you to join Mornington Peninsula Shire Youth Advisory Committee? And what are some of the key takeaways from your 4 years of service?
I guess the thing that really made me want to try it is I thought the only thing I was doing at the time was scouting, so I thought it would be cool to pick up another thing, maybe learn some new skills. I just thought I'd, come try for a little bit was kind of how it was promoted. And I'm so happy that I did try and stayed. I guess
Mhm.
some of my key takeaways was we were taught how to properly like set up a meeting, I guess sharing, taking minutes and that's just a bit more of the formal stuff, but also
Yes.
the connections I made, like I'm on the emailing list for the Shire and that if they ever have a youth event coming up. I think one of the big takeaways is networking and always putting your hand up for stuff.
That is just wonderful, which leads me to my next question in terms of your leadership roles. You're a very young woman stepping into roles of leadership. Is the city council trying to groom its next level of leaders, do you think? You were involved in quite a lot to do with the council. And do you see yourself working in council someday?
Although I don't see myself working in council one day, I do definitely think they're putting a lot of effort into making sure the leaders of tomorrow are prepared. There's definitely a lot of different committees run by a lot of different people for youth. And I'm
Yes.
really happy to see these committees forming because it does make me happy to know that they are taking the steps to make sure that we are prepared to make leaders of tomorrow and to make sure that when we need to take over, we can.
Now, it's challenging for many students to find a balance between academic and extracurriculum commitments. How do you manage your time effectively as a full time student and an active community member?
So I guess there are definitely different things I've heard from many different people about how they work to make sure it's all balanced. Kind of benefit of being I'm now in venturers, which is a higher levels of scouting, because everyone else is also in high school or have jobs. It is definitely much more casual. But also every committee or every group is extremely understanding if you need to take a night off, if you can't sit in. Personally, just find it I find it quite easy to balance. It's only a couple of nights out of the week. I don't always get a lot of homework. It's just definitely a lot of study. But I reckon everyone has their groove, and I reckon people just need to focus on what works for them.
Now, your interest in both art and STEM subjects is quite unique. How do you think art influences your approach to science subjects like chemistry and physics?
So I guess with doing both two art subjects and two sciences, it does definitely let you think outside the box, which I think gets overlooked a lot. The skills you learn in doing art subjects, they are
Mhm.
incredibly important in every other field I've looked at. Having the ability to step back and think about what's truly going on in a reaction, in an equation, is really important. And I do quite like being able to have both of them and use the skills I've learnt from both problem solving and creativity.
Now, let's talk a little bit about psychology's role in leadership. Considering your interest in psychology, how do you apply psychological principles in your leadership roles, especially in the scouting community?
So I guess unfortunately, due to doing psychology in high school, it's definitely not as I guess the things we learn about necessarily aren't as applicable to real life. Unfortunately, we do learn a lot about the bad side of psychology, certain experiments, but it was definitely good to learn about certain aspects that force people to agree with you and stuff like that, and make sure that if you want to be a true leader, you're not using those tactics to make
Mhm.
people listen to you. It's that people are making their own mind up to listen to you. One of the most famous psychology quotes I've ever heard is, a man with conviction is a hard man to convince. And it means that if a person is set on doing something, you can't tell them that they're wrong. You have to show them that they need to find another route. And I've definitely applied that to arguments or to convincing people, is that if
Mhm.
someone's got their mindset on something, you can't just straight up tell them that their mindset is incorrect. You have to show them that they are and let them make their own mind up about it.
Now, looking forward, where do you see your diverse interests leading you? Do you have any specific career aspirations or projects that you're passionate about?
So, actually, contrary to a lot of people's belief, I have a strong interest in physics and in nuclear physics. So, I would like to get my degree in that and work at a power plant, which definitely feels quite far from the stuff I do now. But I do believe all the skills I've learned could be helpful in any field, and I do really hope to continue to be part of committees well into the future. But for some reason, I got interested in something that I don't seem to have a career aspiration in.
Well, it's good to balance it. At least you've got a different thing that you love doing. So, challenges and overcoming them. What challenges have you faced in your various roles and how have you overcome them? And could you give me some specific instances of how you turned a challenge into an opportunity?
Yeah, I guess I never, when I got into being a youth advisory committee, I never really thought about facing challenges as a young person. I'd never really looked at it. And then as I got more involved, I realized it happens everywhere. People, and not just another form of discrimination that people face. And I started to see it more and more, even in places of work. I had a manager who hated me, but only for the reason that I was young. And when I asked her, well, why? She said it's because I'm old. And I was kind of a taken back, as it's a very old form of thinking. Almost every generation has been called out for having some beliefs against the younger generation. It's been recorded back to like the 1700s that people almost just have a prejudice against the new wave of thinking or the new wave of doing. So I hope in the future that that ideology does go away, but I'm not 100% sure that it will. But I truly hope and aspire to go, if I ever get into leadership, is to think back on, well, when I was young, people held that against me, so I'm not going to hold it against them. And I guess also, being a woman, that's just a very well-known one. I,
Mhm.
again, never realized it until one day I was in the US and I had my backpack that had all my scout badges on it. And as I was leaving the bus we were on, a guy came up to me and asked if I was a Girl Scout. And in Australia, we just have scouts. Doesn't matter who you are, you're a scout. And I remember I was instinctually saying, "No, I'm just a scout." And I kind of went away with it, not thinking anything of it, but then kind of realized again, that ingrained almost segregation of men and women, it must be so deeply strung into some people's mind that they instantly assume that if you're a girl, you're doing the girl version of it. Like if you're a soccer player, you must be the female soccer league. Like, definitely didn't
Yes.
realize.
That's interesting. You're learning all of these things now, early before you go into the workplace, which is great to just have that awareness. Now, what happened in Korea was a reflection of the times we're living in with climate change, the uncertainty of weather patterns. How does climate change affect you or impact you? And what do you think you, as a young person, can do about it?
Well, I guess one thing with being in the Shire is that climate change has been on everyone's mind because where we live is on the coast. If sea levels did rise, the peninsula would probably get taken out. So it's definitely something that's on everyone's minds nowadays. And I do hope to see much more change and reform when it comes to big decisions affecting everyone. I do like to see the fact that we will be taking on people from the Pacific Islands if their islands become unlivable. But I think that isn't the approach to take. We need to prevent that happening in the first place. And I guess with the heat wave we experienced in Korea, as much as we were all complaining, everyone had the thought at the back of their mind was, is this going to be the new normal? Jamboree is going to be held in extreme weather every time we attempt to hold one because we feel that in Australia. Almost every Jamboree, something has to go wrong. It's like our scout thing. Like 2016, I believe, everything flooded. People had to build bridges to get breakfast. And despite that's not been great. We did just make funny stories out of it. 2019, which I attended myself, was extreme heat and dust storm. 2021, which was a state jamboree, extreme storms, dust, people with asthma, just they could not go. It to us, even though we make jokes out of it and see it as a normal, it shouldn't be the normal.
So, what can you do as a young person, just on a day by day basis? If there's some young person listening to this podcast, what are some of the things that can be done by young people to prevent climate change?
Definitely a big one is be much more involved in government, in councils, in anything that can give you a voice to advocate for it. People, they might not listen, but you just have to try. That's something that I learned a lot is that there might be people who just try to make it a tick in the box that we ask young people, but you got to try
Mhm.
and you almost got to nag them into it. There's other things like, keeping in mind recycling, keeping in mind just the little things, turning off your lights, not letting water run too long, um, buy more sustainable clothing or food options. There's a lot of little things, but I reckon to make big change, you just have to work on nagging the government to making that change.
Yeah, it's really important. Now, what advice would you give a young person who's listening to this podcast who would like to do what you have done? If you could go back and have a conversation with a younger you and give her three nuggets of wisdom based on what you've learned over the last 4 years, what would those three nuggets of wisdom be?
I reckon it would be put your hand up for everything. I once, when I was in Korea, I met a kid and he had done everything kind of like me. And I asked, like, how do you do everything? And he says, I put my hand up for everything because if it's not for me, they wouldn't pick me, which kind of stuck with me. And I thought, damn, so I guess I really need to look at that. Um, don't be scared to share your opinions. I guess with the citizens panel and having a lot more older people with different mindsets, definitely felt that my opinion was different, but that doesn't mean it's any worse or any better than anyone else. And I guess third of all, learn to get a bit better at public speaking. I get very nervous very quickly. It's normal to say things like and ah there. You'll learn about that in English language. It's a discourse particle. But just if you can speak in front of your school, speak in front of your class, give it a go.
That's awesome. Now, now I'm going to teleport you into the future. You are now 90 years old. We'll have a little time experiment. I know it might sound very far away, but it will happen very quickly. And you are sitting in your rocking chair. You're surrounded by your children, your great grandchildren. If I could take you into the future to go and have a conversation with the older you, based on how you're living your life right now, what would you say to this wise woman who's led you to that point?
I would probably say it's pretty cool we made it this far. If I want to work at a nuclear power plant, I might get some radioactive, illnesses. But I would probably say, did you remember it all? Like, do you remember what we're doing now, or should I continue to work in the way I am, continue putting my hand up? I reckon the answer would be yes, always keep trying, but I never know. I'm not there yet.
The reason why I like to ask that question, especially of young people, is that that wise old woman is already in you. She's the one who's prompting you to put your hand up, to want to make a change in your community. So just keep trusting that little voice when it tells you to do stuff. She's already in you. You already have all the wisdom that you need to have an amazing life. So thank you so much for what you're doing in the world.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. Her Story Circle is trying to attract more young women to come and share their stories as mentors, as coaches, as a source of inspiration, so that we can catch our young girls while they're young and show them who they can be. And Hannah, you're a great example of that.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for inviting me. I did honestly think it was a scam message until I looked on your account and thought this is either it's a really good bot or it's an actual person. And I'm pretty sure it's the latter.
So, no, I do
Yeah.
take time to find the right people on LinkedIn. And when you responded, I was really delighted. So thank you again for saying yes. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is attracting some phenomenal people, young and old, coming to share their stories, to uplift, inspire, empower, and energize. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing person. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Hannah, thanks again for the interview. Bye for now,
Thank
everybody.
you so much.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.